You know, some of this stuff maybe it's unfair to call it no-brainer work, but it's pretty obvious stuff, right? If you've got a bunch of redundant city services and so forth, you can get savings, and that's money, by the way, that money that's not going into concrete or not going into something is money that can be going into scholarships, it can be going into innovation, or it can be going back to taxpayers so that they can do that sort of investing. And some of that stuff we just got to go after and make happen, and we've got to give the space for the elected officials to be able to do that. We're trying to do that with a program we call Efficient Gov Now. Now, some of this stuff, though, as Tom indicates, is really hard and tricky stuff. Particularly, we have this phenomena here going on where we have had relatively limited economic growth, 1% to 2% a year, where we've had physical expansion, sprawl, of 5% to 6% to 7% a year. And so when you have physical expansion going up and you've got economic expansion, which is 7 times less than that, well, for those of you who are business people in the room here, what happens if you've got flat demand and you expand the size of your plant 7 times more than any demand you get over a 40-year period? That's not good business. That's not a good way to run anything. But it does get at fundamental issues about how we do things, because as Tom rightly indicates, people want to control the local decisions and how their schools and playgrounds and everything is organized. But yet it doesn't work system-wide. And so we need to engage in that conversation and drive smart policies. Here, we can't avoid it, but we need to do that. And we're pleased that just this last month, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation out of Florida, with a historic base in Akron, looked at the kinds of things that were going on here in Northeast Ohio and made a $3 million grant for us to engage civic leadership and the public to take on these sorts of questions and to get beyond the throw the bums out mentality to the tough questions.
Well, thank you. I think we're going to take a brief break right here for some City Club announcements, and then we'll come back and take questions from our audience.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we're listening to a Friday forum featuring Tom Waltermire, CEO of Team NEO, and Brad Whitehead, president of the Fund for Our Economic Future, and our moderator is Susan Goldberg, editor of the Cleveland Plain Dealer. We will return to our speakers in a minute for our traditional City Club questions. We encourage each of you to formulate questions for our speakers now and remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point. We welcome you to this City Club forum, especially on this snowy January day. Our greetings go to those present in this room and to those who are guests. We hope you will join us at the City Club as members and become active in our ongoing civic dialogue. Now, we would like to return to our speakers for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphones today are City Club Director of Development, Jessica Leary, and Membership and Outreach Manager, Deborah Agosti, back in the corner. So our first question, please.
Mr. Whitehead, in your comments, you used the phrase influx of new workers. I would like you to comment on how we can reconnect education in our high schools, both central city and suburban, with the needs of employers in the new manufacturing for talent that is not now being developed by our schools.
That's a terrific question, and I suppose if in the graduate there was one word, plastics, if there was one word here, it's internships. One of the highest return investments we can make as a community is in connecting our young people to job and employment opportunities. And I'm glad you especially pointed out manufacturing, because it's certainly a myth that needs to be debunked, that we are in a post-manufacturing world. That's not true. At least the data I saw says that something like 40% of manufacturers are still growing. Maybe not right now in 2009 and 2010, but over the last several years. So manufacturing is an important future, and too many young people don't think that there is a viable opportunity in manufacturing. But it is exposing young people and college-age kids and displaced workers and others to actually having these real opportunities in companies and improving their worth.
What I'd add to that is that, of course, we have a good organization here who has had an agenda on that named Magnet, Manufacturing Advocacy and Growth Network, that Brad has been supporting, and others, with that exact mission. It is critical. One of the, I'll amplify Brad's point about output, is at Team NEO, we regularly track the economy here. People are always surprised when we inform them that manufacturing output, not employment, manufacturing output in this region is as high as it's ever been. And it's been relatively flat over the last few decades, when most of us have an idea that somehow output's dramatically down. It's not. But the number of people working in manufacturing are, because we've all had to become more productive. But because the manufacturing workforce has been aging, we're facing in manufacturing a sizable retirement wave. And so manufacturing will be hiring a lot of people. Their headcount won't be going up, but they're going to be hiring a lot of people to replace the people who are going to be moving out of the manufacturing workforce. So it's critical for manufacturers to be doing this. It's terrific that many of them are banding together within Magnet to get that story out, because there are great opportunities. And manufacturing work today is far more technical, far more intellectual than it has been in the past, and therefore I think more rewarding. And a lot more opportunities. So that word needs to be out there.
And because I see who is all at your table, I think it's important to note as well that the NOCHI, the Northeast Ohio Council on Higher Education, has long been a champion of this sort of thing, and has recently taken up this banner of creating these sorts of opportunities and driving educational attainment more fully, and has been reaching out into the leadership of a number of CEOs here in Northeast Ohio to try to get that more fully on the agenda than it has been.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here to hear what's going to be happening in the future. I have a question about today. In Plain Dealer today, it was reported that American Greetings is considering moving out of the Cleveland area, perhaps because of the raise of tax rates to 2.5%. And so my question, and of course they're raising the tax rate because in this time of recession, the towns are having trouble funding services and infrastructure. So what can be done immediately to work with industry and government to keep corporations in Cleveland? I applaud what you're doing for bringing them in, but what about keeping the ones we have is my concern.
Tom, why don't you start with that?
All of our partners, all of our chamber partners, have very active programs on calling on companies and talking to them about their individual needs, helping them grow, helping them find financing and workforce and so forth. I think it's worth acknowledging the particular point of American Greetings and Brooklyn. That, I think, is a very particular local level. If the cost of running the community in Brooklyn is high enough that it has to be done, maybe you need to talk to Brad about some of the collaborative ideas and how to get the cost of city services down. So any one community that pokes itself up and says, we're going to start charging people who work in this community more money is going to see people moving out of that community. That's true anywhere. On the whole other end of that, by the way, the state of Ohio has been seeing a number of examples of particularly manufacturers picking Ohio for expansions because the tax reform that took place maybe 5 years ago at this point, 4 or 5 years ago, which radically changed the structure of business taxation in the state of Ohio. We're now a low-tax state for manufacturers. In the past, we were a high-tax state.